they're getting beauty. Thank you.
They said, go out there and rob these houses and bring back the bounty, and then that'll pay your way.
Because Republicans who get endorsement from Georgia carry that they mean anything.
You can't sit on the sidelines any longer. You must get involved in the game. This is your sign. Here I stand with dirty hands, and I've searched beyond the morning for your soul. Here you are, below my feet, and your blood dissolved into a mound of grass, and I cannot stop the pain, seeing that you're lying here without a breath. Pick you up, no brown coat, and I pick a shovel up to take you home. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Wednesday night live stream of Small Town Underground. This cold and snowy Wednesday that we've had up here in Northwest Georgia. I hope everybody's doing all right out there. And I know that we've had an absolutely crazy first start of 2025, and there's tons and tons of stuff going on. But I want to try to kind of get back to a little normalcy with the show and continue to bring in guests weekly. And then, of course, we will have special guests and special shows devoted to everything going around. And so I want to kind of make this a focus episode tonight because I really have so many guests that I've got lined up for the show as we continue to grow. And I just want to keep this. I love being able to teach and learn new things. And so on Wednesday night, I'm going to try to bring a guest on, no matter how crazy everything is going on, so we can kind of focus a little bit on certain issues. So tonight, I have Author Hampton back with me from the John Birch Society, and he's agreed to come on tonight so that we could talk about a few things that is going on and kind of make a focal point so that we can learn about just the differences on things that we think we might know, right? So welcome to the show, Arthur.
Well, thanks for having me, Roy.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Anytime we get to chat, I'm a big fan of of course, the John Birch Society, and I learn more and more about them every day as we go down this road of trying to figure out politics and laws and what is really going on in our nation. And I'd like for you to take a second. I have so many new people coming to the channel. And the last time that you and I got together, we were able to make an impact in parts of Georgia with some of our media. So I kind of want to start out afresh and just tell us a little bit about the John Birch Society before we get started.
Well, the John Birch Society was started by Robert Welch. We started in '58, and he named the society after a Christian missionary and martyr, John Birch, who was the first martyr under Chairman Mao Zedong and a Chinese communist. He the American government covered it up because of the communist influence already at that time, because they wanted to paint Chairman Mao Zedong and the Chinese communists in a good light and befriend them. And he's just a agrarian reformer. And so Robert Welch uncovered this story. See, his parents didn't even know. His family didn't even know what happened to John Birch. And Robert Welch found this story about this man from Georgia, and with the permission of his parents and his family, named the society after John Birch, the Christian missionary out of Macon. And at its very core, we oppose communism. We oppose any form of a totalitarian government. We seek to influence and educate the masses and educate legislators back to the Constitution, which they all swore an oath to uphold, and ultimately back to God.
Right. Yeah, man. I'm gonna tell you, I'm new to all of this, and we've all kind of been searching for groups to get involved with, and there's many good groups out there. And I was kind of warned early on, even when I was doing the Second Amendment, about the John Birch, they're extreme. You need to be careful about them. And the more that I grow in this political landscape, the more I realize that, kind of, to me, what I see from the John Birch Society, they really have it going on, and they've kind of had this steady focus for a long time through this. So
absolutely, they label us as conspiracy theories.
Right.
However, we just report the news before the mainstream media reports the news. It seems like. I'll give you a couple examples, and I know several people that keep the New American Magazine, one of the magazines we post.
Oh yeah, it's really good.
20, 30 years ago, we were saying something, and then all of a sudden it drops. Oh, this is true, and lo and behold, we were right all along. Back in the 80s, we were talking about fluoride in the drinking water.
Yes.
And it lowers testosterone. It makes people docile. It
Yes.
and that kind of feeds into the population control thing. And nobody believed us.
Right.
But hey, the Japanese knew about this for years, and they were giving it to, and I don't just mean years, I mean like 50 years. They put extra fluorine and chlorine in their drinking water for prisoners, to make the prisoners docile and less combative. So we've known this for years, and they go, "Oh no, that's just a conspiracy theory." And then lo and behold, we're right.
Absolutely.
And all of the stuff that RFK is talking about in the food, we've been talking about that for years. When you're effective, they target you. In anything, you get targeted when you're effective, because if you're not effective, they don't care.
Right.
Even in sports, when you're scoring, they double team you. They fix their defense around you to try to stop you, and that's in anything. And so I see that as a badge of honor. We've been very effective, and so they try to run propaganda against us to paint us in a bad light.
You're absolutely right. And I'd like to ask you, you've been in this quite a while, and you travel all over the South. I know you are a very, very busy person, always trying to connect people and get things going. Tell me, how do you feel? Now, I call it the dream team. We're the golden age. Trump is here, 2025. All of these revelations that we're finding out. How do you look from your perspective on this sort of dream team that we have going into the White House and all of these institutions? What do you make of all this?
Well, the reason Trump getting into office, and you talk about the dream team, is the very reason I developed this new speech that I have: don't fall asleep in the second half of the game. Too many times, and I'm a South Carolina fan in football, too many times they'll get up, they'll think they got it won in the first half, and then they'll fall asleep in the second half, and then they get beat.
Right.
I am scared that people will say, "Oh, throw their hands up. We've won," and fall asleep. And then in 4 years, we get a Gavin Newsom as president, and it hit the fan again, and now we're all scrounging to do something. And so my thing, what I'm telling people is don't fall asleep in the second half. It's time now. We got a reprieve. It's time now. We need to go on the offensive. And I am very much encouraged by the creation of this Department of Government Efficiency, Doge or whatever they're calling it now, which will recommend cutting federal bureaucracy, but I don't know how many trillions. I think it's astronomical at this point. But if we get back to just what the Constitution says,
Right.
what would happen to the 18 enumerated powers listed in the Constitution, few and defined powers? If we got back to that, we would effectively reduce the size of federal government by 80 to 85%.
If you start talking about the Constitution, and I go down to Atlanta, the Gold Dome, and start talking about the Constitution, they look at us like we're crazy for even mentioning the Constitution. It's wild how far we've gotten away from things. It really is.
Well, not just the federal Constitution, the state Constitution.
Absolutely.
I mean, even less people have read that. And you're dealing with people in Georgia. I mean, I had a conversation with Colton Moore, I'd say about a year or so ago. I said, you're in the Senate. How many people have read the U.S. Constitution in the Senate? He said, well, I'm one of them. Maybe maybe two other senators. And I said, so here's the kicker. How many people in the Senate have read your Georgia state Constitution? He said, oh, just me. I'm the only one. I can tell you that now. And I was like, you're not even having to think about it. You just know. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. Right. They swore an oath to this document, and they don't have a clue what it says.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Now, and you're from South Carolina, so I have to ask this question, especially from us in Georgia. So how do you guys in South Carolina still have Lindsey Graham?
I think he's installed. I mean, we have evidence that they've been cheating since '92, and it was sparked by the 2020 election. And then we started digging, and the more we dug, the deeper the rabbit hole went. And it was like, oh my goodness, all this stuff, and it's just deeper and deeper and deeper, all the way back to '92, and so I don't think he was elected. I think he was installed. He endorsed Tim Scott for president, and he got booed off stage. I mean, everybody was booing him. Nobody likes him.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to have any shame either.
There are rumors. I'm not going to say one way or another, but I'll say this. 98% of secretaries that work for congressmen and senators, in their home state and in DC are females. And the 2% or 0.2% happens to be Lindsey Graham, which he hires guys for some reason to be secretary and stuff like that. So,
oh, that's hilarious.
It's interesting. Well, I passed by his office. I got a friend that has a shop next to Lindsey Graham's office in Columbia, and he regularly dumps freedom indexes in the mailbox at Lindsey Graham's office, who has quite a low number. I think the last time I checked, he had a 37.
Oh yeah, it's pretty bad.
I mean, I could almost see the argument, somebody voting for the Democrat just to get Lindsey out and then vote Republican again.
Man, I'm telling you.
Because, I mean, he's got a 37. I know Democrats and liberals that have better voting records than him. You can't say he's better.
Oh no, he constantly pops up on my X feed, and it just, I feel like it's just some of the stupidest stuff I read. It's constantly like flip-flopping and just lollygagging, and he is such a mess. And I've been told that there's going to be some people primarying him. I certainly hope so. I hope the people of South Carolina will wake up and get rid of him, retire him out of the system. He's embarrassing.
He is very embarrassing. And there's already been people declare their candidacy against Lindsey. And so they hate him here. I don't understand how.
I don't either.
At this point, even if they're cheating, how can you even say that he won? Because nobody likes him. Nobody that I talk to.
I know.
And he seems to be the gold standard for rhinos. When I'm talking about voting records and whatnot, and I'll say, well, this guy's a Republican, but Lindsey Graham has a better voting record than him. And they go, oh my goodness.
Right.
Lindsey Graham has a better voting record than him. Oh man, he's the rhino gold standard. Oh, and by the way, he is in support of a convention of states.
Yes. So yes, great segue into this. So let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes tonight. So what I'm going to pull up here for our audience is this recent bill. We talked about this bill the other day, and I'm wanting to learn more about this. So I'm going to pull this up so our audience can listen. The chats are up. If anybody wants to leave a chat, I know we got people watching. Feel free to comment in here. But this is Georgia. It's a Senate Resolution 23, and I'm going to read it, the summary. This was put in. This is a partisan bill. It says Republican 15-0. We got a lot of Republicans in favor of this all over the state. They introduced this on February the 10th. All right, about 9 days ago, and it says a resolution applying to the United States Congress to call a convention under Article V of the Constitution of the United States, limited to proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States to set a limit on the number of terms that a person may be elected as a member of the United States House of Representatives, and set a limit of terms that a person may be elected to the United States Senate, and for other purposes. So this is to a Congress to call a convention under Article 5. So can you help us break this down?
First of all, term limits are a bad idea. And I know that's not going to make me very popular among some people, but term limits are a bad idea.
All right. Now, before you go in, I want you to know that I'm learning tonight, because I've always kind of agreed with term limits and thought that term limits are a great thing, and that we should be limiting how long when we have Lindsey Grahams and the like, these Mitch McConnells. So, but I'm still like on the fence. So I want to hear the argument here from your perspective.
Well, let me ask you this question, and you see this a lot, and I forgot what they called it. You see this a lot in the military. So if someone's worked at a place and he's on the verge of retirement, and in the military, you get your 20-year letter. You've got your retirement. You've got 6 months left. What accountability does leadership have over you if you're going to retire?
Usually you're tenured, right?
Tenured, yes. Or something of the sort. They can't do anything to you.
Okay.
Do you think that they're going to work as hard as they were working if there's no accountability? I'm already on the way out. Right. And that's what term limits does. It creates a lame duck. Okay. Why do you think? Well, so if I put in my 2 weeks notice at a job, what accountability do they have over me? What are they going to do? Fire me?
Right.
I'm already gone.
Okay.
There's no accountability. And here's the kicker question. Which state in the union has the most or the strictest term limits?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Throw a state out there.
I want to say California.
California.
Is it really? All right.
California.
Okay.
Now, you really want to be about California? This is what happens in California. So you hit the term limit and in one seat. And so you start campaigning. Once you win that election in your final term, you already start campaigning for the next position. So you're in this seat, you already start vying for this position. Now, you're already on your way out. Why even worry about it?
Okay.
You go to the next position. Well, you get term limited there. You move to the next position. And then it's just a big circle of.
It's like another merry-go-round.
Seat swap. It's you play musical chairs at this point.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, in California, there's term limits on the term limits. So you do the big circle musical chairs, and then when you get done, you can run for your original seat. Okay. It's ludicrous. Right. And what it does is it takes accountability away from the people.
Okay.
What are you going to do? Not vote for me? I don't care. And I can show you the voting records. Any state that has term limits, the voting record goes dumpster fire garbage in their last term because there is no accountability. It's a double-edged sword where there is, I think we both can agree that there are fewer and further between good people than there are bad. So what you do is you just win, the left wins by attrition.
Okay.
Because there's a lot more people that are bad than good. And I forgot the guy's name. There was a guy in the Georgia State House that said, I believe in term limits, and so I'm going to term limit myself. And he got out. And then the guy that won the next election was a crazy, raging Republican rhino. And so he runs again and beats the guy that and says, well, if that's who you're going to elect, I might as well get in there and make a difference.
Right.
And going against it, because you're limiting the voice. The only accountability that the electorate has over the elected official is whether or not they can vote for him again.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you look at every single president, the second term was worse than the first. I mean, every single president in the last 40 years, the second term was worse than the first. Okay. Let's look at it. Obama's certainly was. Fast and the Furious, all this craziness. George Bush, he ran on being pro-life. And then in his second term, he funds Planned Parenthood. Why? Because there's no accountability. He's on the way out. What are we going to do to him? Even Reagan. Now, I like Reagan. He was one of the better presidents in the last 50 years. But in his second term, what did he do? Can't sue the vaccine companies anymore for they have immunity for vaccine damages. No fault divorce. That's really unbiblical. He banned the manufacture of fully automatic weapons in certain areas so that the public can't. That was the beginnings of a violation of the Second Amendment for the public to get fully automatic weapons. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that takes place, and he was one of the better presidents we've had.
Right.
You know, look at, I mean, Clinton's was worse. I mean, you name it. The second one was worse than the first because there is no accountability anymore. And the kicker for all of this, and I'll explain why it works like this, is Ted Kaufman.
Okay.
Do you know who Ted Kaufman is? Anybody in the chat?
I think I've heard of him before, but
Ted Kaufman.
For some reason, the chats aren't seeming to work tonight, but
They're
like
not
I
working?
said,
Okay.
I don't know why. Everything's going through just fine, and we are recording this, but if you have any questions or want to add to the chats, feel free to.
So Biden is the poster child for people that want term limits. He's been in office for over 50 years.
Yeah.
He needs to get out. He's the reason why we need term limits. Okay. Well, when he got to be vice president, the people of Delaware elected Ted Kaufman
Okay.
for 3 terms. Biden, when he was in office, he had a 17 voting record. That's pretty bad.
Dismal.
It's still better than your Warnock and Ossoff's goose egg
my
zeros.
Goodness.
I mean, come on. But anyway, so Ted Kaufman, his voting record was worse than Biden's.
Gotcha.
If someone would elect a Biden, they'll elect a Ted Kaufman, just like Biden. That's what the people want in Delaware. They elect Biden, they elect Ted Kaufman. And then after Ted Kaufman lost to another guy that has a voting record that's just like Biden's. Term limits is not the answer.
Right.
Because if they will elect a Biden, they'll elect somebody else just like him. Probably younger, probably more active, and probably can do more damage. And I think a Nancy Pelosi Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi is a really good representative for the people that elected her. That's what they want. AOC got elected. That's what those people want. And term limiting them out is not the answer. What happens is the bureaucracy takes over because it takes 2 or 3 years, if not longer, to figure the game out. And the
Right.
deep state loves term limits because by the time you figure out the game and all their little tactics, because there's a ton of them, and the more I've been in this for years, and the longer I'm in it, the more tactics I figure out, and the more I figure out all these little ways of manipulation and wagging the tail, a handler, as Thomas Massey said. You get a handler when you get to DC. You get a handler when you get to the Gold Dome. They even got handlers on the local level.
Wow.
And if we got time, I can go into that as
Oh,
well.
we've got time. And I want to interject just a little bit, see, because like what you're saying makes so much sense when you really think about it. So it's almost like we've been kind of sold a bill of goods that this is going to be a great thing, the narrative, the perception, because emotionally you want. You don't want Nancy Pelosi doing what she does up there, but we're not understanding that her constituents voted for her, and that it's a problem that deals with culture and society more than anything. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
It reflects what Sir William Blackstone said in his commentary on English law. He said, laws that are legislated, laws are the embodiment of the moral sediment of the people. Now, let me break that down for you. The moral sediment of the people, what people believe morally, they're going to vote according to their moral sediment about what they believe. And that makes sense. If I'm conservative, I'm going to vote for conservatives. If I'm a liberal, I'm going to vote liberals. Okay. And so the laws that are implemented are the embodiment of the moral sediment of the people.
Right.
And so that's what JBS does. That's what the John Birch Society does, is we educate and influence the moral sediment of the people. Now, that's a long-term strategy, but it's a long-term strategy that has lasting results. Most people say, well, we just need to get people elected. Well, if that was the case, then we should be moving more conservative, because Republicans win, I think, 58 or 60% of the time in the last 70 years. So we should be moving right, should we not?
We should be.
But we're not. We're not, because getting people elected is the short-term answer. Influencing the moral sediment of the people is the long-term solution. And that's a hard sell to people sometimes, because you don't see the results up front. It takes time, but things that takes time tends to last.
You bring up a good point. Let's take Colton Moore, for example. A lot of people have a criticism of Senator Moore, saying, what has he done for our district, right? And this epiphany came to me last night, and just as you were talking, and I made this comment, but I'm chasing 150 different bills with different numbers in my head. You just brought this to my attention the other day. That was 9 days ago. And what we're doing, we're seeing all of this legislation come through at breakneck speed in about 40 days to sign die. And there's bill after bill after bill that we question and concern. My state senator Colton Moore is in the culture. He's being like the stopgap in a lot of these things. I'm not asking for a handout from my state senator, but I am asking him to protect our communities, and I believe that that's what he's done, and he's getting punished for that. But to me, that shows a long-term sort of goal of changing how we do things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. He's a great member of the John Birch Society. And when I saw what happened to him, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago now, I was like, of course they're going to do that to the John Birch Society guy. Stand up for tyranny and then get punished for it. But I see it as a badge of honor,
Right. Well,
take it on the chin, keep going, keep plowing away.
Of what you're saying, it makes sense. We need people like that. We need people to stop the madness in the merry-go-round and the circus. And I feel like that I'm for the first time thinking twice about term limits, like you're talking about.
The other thing is our founding fathers. So, and this is another reason why we should not call a constitutional convention. So our founding fathers, are they more conservative or more communistic than the legislators we have today?
Are they more
Are they more
communistic?
conservative, or are they more communistic than the legislators that we have today?
I would say they're more conservative.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
you're comparing one end of the spectrum to the other.
Mm-hmm.
So our founding fathers, when they established the Constitution, what Gary North used to call the conspiracy in Philadelphia, and it was a conspiracy, but not an evil conspiracy. It was secret because they went beyond what they were commissioned to do by the states. Okay. And the article, because they were supposed to amend the Articles of Confederation, but they didn't do that. They threw the Articles of Confederation out and came up with a new Constitution. And they were more principled back then than they are now. I mean, you had Benjamin Franklin standing up and saying, look, we're at an impasse. We need to go back to our churches, take a fortnight, that's 2 weeks, and pray to God to give us wisdom, and then we'll reconvene. Would you have that today in a convention? No. What would happen is they would take a fortnight and go see who's going to give them the most money. Big Pharma, BLM, the
USAID.
USAID. I mean, who's going to give me the most money to vote a certain way?
Right.
And what they're doing is they're taking a bowl of beans and selling their birthright is what they're doing. That's what Esau did, which was foolish. But there was term limits in the Articles of Confederation. And our founding fathers, living under the Articles of Confederation, saw the error of term limits. And that's why they left them out of the Constitution, because they saw that it got rid of the accountability that the electorate had over the people, or the people had over the electorate or the elected officials. And they were wise enough to take it out. Now they're talking about putting it back in. But even if you want to put those back in, Article 5 is not the way to do it.
Really?
If you want to do that, if you want to amend the Constitution, do it through Congress. It's been done 27 different times, and we've kept the Constitution.
Right.
Why call for an Article 5 convention that opens the entire thing up to be overhauled, just like our founding fathers did? And they all admitted to it. Rhode Island, I think they had their delegates said, well, this is not what we have been commissioned to do. So we need to go back to our states and get more permission to do this. And so they left. And Rhode Island did not get a say in that convention. And yet they were still forced to live under it. Imagine that. And there was no rhyme or reason. Was it based off a population? Was it based off a state? That first convention, no, whoever showed up was there. Gotcha. Article 5, there is no determination. It's solely reliant on Congress.
Okay.
Solely reliant on Congress. And so they set the parameters of the convention.
Wow.
And who was our former Speaker of the House? Nancy Pelosi.
Yes.
You really want her deciding the parameters of our Constitution?
No.
But it worse. The whole argument for a convention is a logical fallacy.
Okay.
So
we're talking about the fallacy of convention of states.
Right.
Okay.
So we need to call a convention, they say, to rein in big government because they won't limit themselves. So you're going to give them the power to rewrite the Constitution. It's absurd.
Right. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this because I know a little bit about convention states, and I know people that are fighting for this and that are good people. But kind of let's get into that. What does this open us up to?
It opens us up to get overhauled, and what the people on the ground, what the common layman or the commoner doesn't know is that is at the top. They've already got a new constitution written.
Okay.
Mark Meckler commissioned one of his board members, advisory board members, Robert P. George, to write a new constitution, and he calls it a conservative constitution.
Okay.
About as conservative as Lindsey Graham was considered conservative. But the First Amendment's gone. You
Really?
don't have any freedom of speech. The Second Amendment is gutted pending the approval of government agencies.
Really?
And I can send you the link so you can post it up there.
Absolutely.
I think I might have already did that. I can't
think you
remember.
did. I think you did. I'm pretty sure, but I need to check this out.
So the Second Amendment's gutted pending the approval of government agencies. Well, if we tell you you can have a gun, you can. That's the Second Amendment. If the KGB tells me I can have a gun, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
The Fourth Amendment, our right to privacy is gone. Search and seizure, all of that's gone. The Fifth Amendment, we see that in movies. Oh, I plead the Fifth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that one's important, especially if you have a tyrannical government. You can remain silent. That's where our Miranda rights come from. If not, then if you don't speak, they can force you to speak, or they rough you up or waterboard you or whatever.
Sure.
So the Fifth Amendment's important. The 10th Amendment is gone as well. States' rights. What it would do is we wouldn't be the United States of America anymore. We would be the United State of America if that happened.
Gotcha.
And I don't know if anybody caught this. I think I seem to be the only one. If you remember Tucker Carlson's interview with Putin, who's a communist, he said, "You Americans, you're so inefficient. I would eliminate all of your state governments."
I watched that interview, and I don't recollect that.
Watch it again. It was very subtle. And I would have one government in D.C. That's centrally controlled power. And that's coming from a communist. Okay. And our founding fathers gave us a government that was a decentralization of power to prevent tyranny.
Right.
You have a lesser magistrate to stand up to the greater magistrate, just like we did King George. And if the state goes awry, you have a local magistrate, you have a sheriff that can stand up to the state.
Absolutely. That's a good thing.
And that's a good thing, But the very fact that they're ignoring in DC and, well, everywhere, the state level, federal level, local level, they're blatantly ignoring the Constitution. Probably because they don't know it out of ignorance, but that's their fault. They swore an oath. They decided to run. They need to read the documents and do their due diligence. But they're blatantly ignoring the Constitution as it is. Why should we be messing with the Constitution then? How is that going to solve anything if they're ignoring it?
Right.
That reminds me of liberals crying out for gun control. You have a gunman that acquires a gun illegally. He goes on the school property illegally. He shoots people illegally. And, when they arrest him, they ring him up for, 10 laws that he breaks. And you have liberals, we need more gun control laws. Well, you're going to add an 11th law to the 10 that he already broke.
Exactly.
Let's enforce the Constitution, not change it.
Right.
Let's obey the Constitution, not change it. It's the same thought process. And here's the thing. About 10 years ago, they stopped debating us. They used to debate us, but now they don't anymore. Because every time a debate happens, it's very easy to shine a light through the smoke and mirrors. And, people come out on the other side. I give this speech. I give my con speech in a little town outside of Macon, Georgia. And before I began, I asked everybody, raise your hand if you're for it, raise your hand if you're against it. And, there were some people that raised their hands in favor of a constitutional convention or a convention of states or whatever you want to call it. And by the end of it, I had people coming up to me going, wow, I got to rethink this. I got to rethink this, because it's so easy to see what's going. It's so easy to see the smoke and mirrors when you just shine a light on it. I mean, and these people are really good used car salesmen. I mean, their talking points are amazing. And I tend to think when you upgrade, when you get to be a really good used car salesman, you upgrade to a politician. They're even smoother talkers. And so that's kind of the thing there. And they smooth talk people into this, unsuspecting people that it's unreal. But there's just no real reason to call for one. based off of term limits. Or the other thing that they push for is a balanced budget amendment.
Okay.
Balanced budget amendment. They must really love taxes, because to balance the budget, they ain't gonna stop spending. They're just gonna raise your taxes.
Right.
You might end up with a Bernie Sanders 90% income tax.
We see it all the time.
I mean, they don't ever stop the spending. It's, but I like to quote Milton Friedman, the great economist. He says, I think it foolhardy to pursue a balanced budget amendment, because the economy always balances itself out. You either pay more in taxes, or you pay for it in inflation, which is a tax. Your money's just worth less. And it's a subtle tax. It's a tax on the elderly that's worked their whole life and saved up their money. And all of a sudden, let's say you save up $100,000 and you plan to live the rest of your life on that or whatever. And all of a sudden inflation hits and your money is going to go half as far as you think it is. I mean, that's a backhanded tax. And so it's foolhardy. And that's what the deep state does.
Right.
They don't fully go against you. They just get you off on things that doesn't matter. If they can get you working on things that won't matter, then you've already lost. It's basically like the art of war, Sun Tzu. Control your enemy. Get them working on stuff that won't make a difference, and then when they don't make a difference, you can do whatever you want to do.
Right. You're making a lot of sense here. I mean, you've got my attention on term limits, and really, when you sit down and you ask yourself why, right? Because you kind of are taking the accountability away, and it becomes a very more sort of a more structured machine, if you will, because it's very predictable, right? You know that no matter what, those people are going to be out of office. You're going to have the new slate, and you can actually sort of fine tune that machine a little more. Is what I feel like after we've discussed this.
Absolutely, yeah. And what lobbyists do, they always go to the freshman legislators. Why? Because their briefcase is empty. They don't have anything on the schedule. They don't know anybody. Right. They aren't ingrained yet, and they see fresh meat. Because they don't know the game. They don't know the game. And so they go to them and they schmooze them and, do all these things and work all these tactics that they don't know because they're susceptible to it. And the lobbyist wins. Right.
They're going to be your best friend. They're going to wine you. They're going to dine you. They're going to introduce you to everybody. They're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. And they're going to put the little bright, shiny object in the room until they have your full attention, and then you feel great about everything that they're selling you.
Yep.
It's a wild system.
And so the bureaucracy wins. The handlers win when term limits are in place. And we don't do this in any other, only in politics do we want to do this. You want the most experienced guy leading the charge. In a corporation, generals have been around for 20, 30 years. They know warfare. They know the game. CEOs have been around. They know leadership. They know how to do this. They've been doing it a while. And then we get to politics. Oh no, we want the young guy. Well, that's just foolishness.
Right. Well, look at like Ron Paul. I've grown up with Ron Paul. Look at how much people got woke up with Ron Paul alone. And then you take somebody like Thomas Massey who's been around, and he can break it down like clockwork, exactly how things are going to go, and just show you everything. And then 2 weeks later, it goes exactly to plan. So I kind of agree. I'm really, really agreeing with you that possibly term limits, I mean, it definitely doesn't seem like a good idea. So my question to you is, so this Georgia bill is, and we were talking a little before the show, is not unlike other bills, right? In other states, for example. You're in South Carolina. What kind of bill do you have like this?
There's 4 con bills in South Carolina right now in various places, in committee and, first reading, second reading. And one of them is a term limit bill. It's very similar to yours. And I don't remember the exact date because there's 4 different ones. 4 con. I think one of them is term limits. One of them's for a balanced budget amendment. Tennessee just passed one last year
Hmm.
for a term limits. Mississippi has two right now, one for term limits and one for a balanced budget amendment. So I'm tracking a lot of different bills, and you know, the structure of every term limit bill is very similar because the same people are writing these bills. They just they change the basic cake is there. They just change the icing and you know different bells and whistles on it and change the color a little bit to match the state that they're talking about. But at its core, it's the same thing. And that right there shows me or tells me that this is a consorted effort.
Right.
This is a conspiracy because the same thing keeps cropping up in every state systematically. I'll give you another example. Ranked choice voting.
Oh, yes.
Okay. The garbage that is ranked choice voting.
Yes.
It cropped up in Georgia, I don't know, 2 years ago.
It did.
Then it was in South Carolina, and then it was in Tennessee, and then it was in, Alaska. Well, Alaska's the one that got, I think Sarah Palin got, ranked choice voted out.
And Lisa, was it Lisa Murkowski is the one that got ranked choice voted in?
Yes. Yeah.
And she's turned out to be a complete failure.
Yes. Now, that's just the results of it.
Right.
And it's the same bare bones stuff. Or another one that they like to entice people on, school choice.
Mm-hmm.
You got a school choice bill, and here in Georgia, and then in South Carolina, they passed one last year, and 5 years ago they passed one in Florida. Arizona passed one, and it's the same thing. It's just repackaged, different icing on the cake, in different things, and it's a bad thing. Now, school choice sounds like a great thing, which like I said, they make things sound very good. But in Arizona, to get the money for the school choice stuff, you have to have your home inspected to make sure your house is up to snuff before you educate your own children in your own home.
Right.
Now, that's an extreme example, but most of the time what happens is, well, to get the money, you're going to have to, there needs to be standards. You got to use this curriculum. Well, I don't want to use that curriculum. That curriculum's in the public school. That's the reason I homeschool. Well, then you don't get the money. You have to use this textbook. I don't want to use that textbook. That textbook's got critical race theory in it, and it's got pornography in it. I don't want to use that textbook. Well, if you don't use it, don't get the money.
Right.
So they dangle that over your head. And so, and it's systematic with everything. And so, there is some sort of conspiracy behind it.
Okay.
Because it's systematically being pushed in every state in the exact same way. And that's and I talk about how hard it is managing so many different states, but managing so many different states and going to so many different state houses, you can see what happens.
Right.
I have that experience to go, okay, this is what's happening because it happened here, it happened here, it happened here, and they're pushing for it again. And so anybody that's listening that has not been, and this is going out to Georgians, so to the Gold Dome, if you haven't been to your state capital, you need to go visit while it's in session, just to see what goes on.
Agreed.
Go talk to your, whether you have an appointment or not. It might be better if you don't. They might avoid you. I don't know.
Yeah, they most certainly.
Show up at their offices. Hey, talk to the secretary. See what she's like. Talk to the researcher in the back. It's always a guy.
Oh yes.
And figure out what's going on. And I about a year or two ago, I was at the Gold Dome in Atlanta, and there was some doctors there, and they had their white coats on and a stethoscope.
Every year, yep.
They were there wanting money. They had their hand out, wanting money.
Got to have that money.
And then there was another group of people. They had red coats on, beautiful red blazers, and they were firemen. They wanted money for the fire department. And there was also another group there, the Girl Scouts. They weren't selling cookies. They had their hand out too, wanting money.
Sure. That's
at
some
some
of that.
point, the spending's got to stop. The
Amen.
state is not a bank. If
Oh,
you need
no.
money, go to a bank, take out a loan. Don't go to the state for money. That's redistribution of wealth.
Yeah, well,
That's
that's
communism.
business as usual, Arthur. That's
Well,
why it's
yeah.
been happening. It's crazy. We're seeing that for probably the first time in history that we're really seeing that. I mean,
Well, here's the kicker. About, I don't know, a week or two ago, I was at the South Carolina State House in Columbia. And you know what I saw? There were doctors there with stethoscopes.
with the white coat.
They're white coats.
Mm-hmm.
And they were asking for money. And there was a group there that had red blazers on. They weren't firemen, but they had red blazers on. And I'm like, deja vu?
Mm-hmm.
And the Girl
Yes.
Scouts weren't there, but the Boy Scouts were there.
Yep, you're right.
Same thing. All wanting money from the state.
And going every single day and probably getting paid to be there until they get their money, right?
It's like, what in the world? I expected George Orwell to come out and go, hey.
I'm telling you, it's wild. So yes, so you have brought some really good valid points. We got about probably 10 minutes, and I do apologize, but for some reason, I don't think that the comment stream came up tonight, and I have no idea why. It's up on my end, but we do have several people watching right now over platforms. So if you guys want to post comments to this stream on either X or Facebook or Rumble, I'll be glad to try to answer the questions because we love to get comments from everybody. But tell us a little bit. You know, we've talked about term limits and how the perception versus reality, and we've talked about how convention of states could lead to a mass overhaul of something we already have in place. So what solutions can you give? Because you know, some of this information might blow people's minds. I know myself, the revelations that are coming out and how we've always been kind of led to believe that term limits are a great thing, and we've kind of drank that Kool-Aid because we're always wanting to look at something positive that our government is doing, our politicians are doing. What are some of the long-term things that we can do in the positive about moving forward, right? I think you get what I mean?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to shine, to be a beacon of light shining through the smoke and mirrors that is their facade, helping people wake up to what's, what they're really trying to do. And that's overhaul the Constitution, despite what they say, because you don't just write a Constitution.
Right.
I mean, on Friday, if you're bored, you go bowling, you go see a movie, you do something fun, you go golfing. You don't write a Constitution. I mean, unless you want to implement it. And that's where we are. It's a classic bait and switch. The other thing is, make your legislators aware on the local level, on the state level. Make them aware of the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. Make them aware of nullification, which is the real solution to government overreach.
Gotcha.
It's what our founding fathers said to do. And the other thing that our founding fathers said to do is the disquietude of the people. And I love that archaic word, the disquietude of the people. Folks, the time for being the silent majority is over.
Amen.
Okay. I'll say it again, the time for being the silent majority is over. We have to use what our founding fathers said was the disquietude of the people. And make our legislators aware of nullification as the real solution and not messing with the Constitution.
I can't agree with you more. Look at the federal income tax. For the first time in my lifetime, and probably yours, we are seriously talking about nullifying the federal income tax, right? It's blowing my mind. We have actual bills that people are putting up, and this is not the time to be quiet. And you talk to people that aren't as involved as we are, and they're like, oh, it's never going to happen. And I'm like, it's never going to happen if you sit on your hands and you don't tell your legislatures that we have the upper hand right now. We could literally get out of these excessive taxes, these non-justifiable, unconstitutional taxes, if we just stand up together and tell them.
Well, here's the thing: the people that say, "Well, that's never going to happen," you're already defeated.
Yes.
If you believe it's never going to happen, you're going to fight like it's never going to happen. And guess what? It's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is never going to happen.
That's right.
You need to fight with the belief that I can make this happen with the power of God, with God behind me, and we can do it.
Hey,
You need to
amen.
fight to win. We need to play to win. And I think so far we've been fighting. We've been pulling punches. We've been fighting, defeated. And guess what? We've been getting defeated. When Roe v. Wade was overturned, how long is Roe v.
Oh my Lord, was it 60 years?
60. And when it happened, I thought I had to control my thoughts.
Right.
I was like, because they were going back and forth about overturning it. And I was like,
Mhm.
that ain't never going to happen, is it? That's the first thing I thought. And I said, no, hold on. Now, we need to play to win. Okay. So we started doing things to push for the disquietude of the people. And lo and behold, it did. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that
it's
was
not
huge.
completely there. It's left to the states, but it is a step in the right direction.
Yes.
And so, I mean, we need to quit pulling punches. We need to educate our legislators. Go to your sheriff on the local level and say, look, are you willing to defend me like those sheriffs did in New Mexico when the state came down and said, or the governor came down and said, we're going to ban open carry. They marched on the Capitol and said, come and take it. Are you going to defend me? This is your duty. I elected you to defend my rights. And if you're not going to do it, we need to find somebody else that does.
Right.
Somebody with the spine to do it. Okay.
Agreed.
Go to your state legislators on the state level. Talk to them about these things. I elected you to defend my rights against federal tyranny and any other tyranny. If you're not going to do that, we need to find somebody else. Oh, by the way, you're my representative. You represent me. I elect you to go to Atlanta on my behalf and vote as if it were me.
Right.
If you're not representing me when you vote, I need to find another representative.
Yeah, and I think you and I had this conversation last time. You really opened my eyes about this, but to kind of paraphrase our conversation, if the only time that our representatives hear from us is when we're mad and we're angry and we're calling them with an earful of things and we're not discussing them, if the only time is when they feel like they've got pitchforks against them, they're never going to respond to you, right? We should have an open dialogue with our representatives, no matter if we like them or dislike them. They're in the position, and we need to have an open dialogue and let them know how we feel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when they're not in session, they live near you. They're in your district. They're not too far away. So build a relationship with them. Take them to coffee. Take them to lunch. Talk to them.
That's right.
They're in your community.
That's right.
They go to church. They're supposed. They go to church. Their kids go to school in your same district. Build a relationship with them. That way, when that important vote comes up, and it will happen, you can call them or text them and say, "Hey, look, if you want to represent me, vote this way." And I counsel people, unless you really know the bill in and out, don't argue with them over what's in the bill. Right. Because they have handlers at the state house, and a lot of times they've been schmoozed. And if you don't know the bill really well, they'll schmooze you.
Got you.
So don't argue. I basically just say, if you want to represent me, vote this way. They can't argue with that.
Right.
Well, this bill I don't care. If you want to represent me, vote this way, and leave it at that.
Wow.
Don't discuss the bill with them. I mean, you can point things out in the bill if you know it well enough to do that.
Right.
I'm at the level, you're probably at the level that you can do that. But you got to know the bill.
I've had a lot of discussions in the last couple of weeks about bills with representatives. So I mainly ask the questions like, tell me why. But I think I can spot some of the real reasoning behind it too. So,
yeah. And to mention one of the talking points for Convention of States is they say, well, no liberal Democrat is for this. Well, back in the 80s, we got the closest we've ever got to calling a convention, and it was with the Democrats. It was a Democratic bill that was proposing this stuff. Wolfpack, guy that's on the advisory board for Wolfpack, who is it's a Democratic thing. They're liberals. Was Mark Meckler's debate partner, Lawrence Lessig. He openly admitted that the first convention was a runaway, and he wants to see another runaway convention. That's why he's calling for a convention of states. Gavin Newsom openly calls for a convention of states because he don't like the Second Amendment. Do you think they're going to sit idly by and let this convention just roll on past them without saying anything?
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. He's been calling for a convention of states. Wow.
Yeah. Now, why is that? Why? Something's odd. When supposedly a conservative, gets on board with liberal, something's not right. There's the uniparty coming out.
Well, it just makes me curious. I mean, some of the names on this bill, are pretty respected Republicans, and it just makes me wonder, do they even know? Do they even understand this concept? Or is this just some sort of a bill that looks good and it makes people feel good, and we've got to pass this bill because everybody wants it, right? But we don't really even understand what it is.
Well, they're really good liars, and they lie a lot. And that I just exposed one of the lies that they say. No liberal wants this, and they make it sound like the masses want this, when there's only like 3 people, vying for it, and they're lobbyists. Everybody wants this, and for some reason they have a ton of money. I mean, a ton of money behind this movement. Now, you tell me what real conservative organization has tons and tons and tons of money. They ain't, that's just not a thing. So there's a question there. Where are they getting that money from? Is it George Soros?
Oh,
Is it Bill Gates? Where are they getting the money
from?
I
mean, just look how hard they're fighting against the Doge and the government bureaucracy and all the money. I mean, obviously, we know that this is not just a one-sided issue. It's been proven already. So it's wild.
Absolutely. And, Mark Levin was against this, and then they give him $600,000, and now he's for it.
The power of the
purse. I got offered $600,000, I'd at least think about it.
Right.
I'd say no.
Yeah.
And I think Jim DeMint got $140,000 for this. We have email traffic that they offered Rush Limbaugh $2.2 million, and he turned him down.
Wow. True, man.
And so.
Well, yeah, obviously the money just changes everything. And I'm telling you, and I think that's one reason why they have an issue. We've got a golden opportunity. We're at the golden age gates, right? We are in uncharted territory. A few months ago, we were staring down the barrel of nuclear war. Now here we are. Everything's flipped upside down. And you would think that our Republicans and our conservatives would be 100% on board with this and ready to move forward. Yet in my state alone, every day it looks like that Trump is not even president. There's no such thing as Doge, and things are just steamrolling ahead, business as usual. And it's a shame to me. But we're not down. I'm not out here asking for a handout from these people either. We just want things to be right. So,
absolutely, I just want to keep the money that I earn. And to put it a different way, they tax us what? 25%? 30%?
30%, yes.
30%? Okay. So what's 30% of 12 months?
Oh, Lord.
4 months.
Yeah, 4 months.
So you work 4 months and you don't get to keep that money.
Yeah.
Think about that.
I know.
4 months out of the year, you don't get to keep your paycheck.
That's right.
Think of it in that way.
Gosh.
And doesn't that make you angry? Let's do something about it.
It makes me terribly angry. Terribly.
And that's off the top. That's not even
terribly
sales tax.
Angry that my money is not even going to me. It's going to everything that is poisoning me and my community, my family, everything. It's trying to break us down. It's insane. Don't get me started.
Well, and that's what we need is we need people that are motivated, and it doesn't take a majority.
No.
It takes a minority that is dedicated and willing to sacrifice and and ready to do, and willing to give. We got to get back to give me liberty or give me death. If we don't
Amen.
fight like that, we're not going to win.
Agree. So tell us, Arthur, how can people get involved? Now, we've given them some information. We've given them something to think about here. Probably some of these people have never heard it put this way. So how can they get involved in this fight?
Well, I'd tell them to go to jbs.org and sign up for the John Birch Society. We have strategies that have worked for years and years and years. We just don't have the manpower to do that. I'm only one person, and I've got every state from South Carolina to Texas. And I don't think I can clone myself, but what I can do is I can educate people to do what I do. I can consult people so that you can get active in your own local community and make things happen on that. Get involved by going to all your local event things. Well, maybe not all of them, but go to what you can go to: school board, zoning and planning, county council, city council, legislative delegation. Go to the state capitol, visit your people, let them know you're there, let them know you care. Too many times what happens is the battle is fought and lost, and we don't even know about it. We're too busy. Georgia Bulldogs, Carolina Gamecocks, and I love the Gamecocks, don't get me wrong, but it has its place. What happens under the Gold Dome matters in Georgia. What happens in Athens don't. I mean, that's just true.
Yes.
And so we've got to get back to that mentality of things that matter. And bread and circuses. And that's what we have, because nobody knows what's going on. And that's one of the tools that JBS offers is legislative alerts on the state level and on the federal level. When these things go out, we email blast, because people are busy. You're working, you got family, you got kids, your life happens, and all of a sudden, we can't even, it's impossible for one person to keep track of everything on the local level.
Yes.
Listen to the things that I listed to just on the local level: zoning and planning, school board, city council, county council, legislative delegation, Republican Party, Democratic Party, all these meetings that meet once a month, and you can't go to all of them.
No.
And a lot of times they meet at the same time. You can't go to two things at the same
day.
time.
Absolutely.
And that's just on the local level. That doesn't include the state level.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the thousands and thousands of bills that they push through and push through and push through. And I'm tracking them, and you're tracking them. And, I sat down with the head of Eagle Forum, and her and I met and talked for an hour and a half about the bills. This was at the end of last year's legislative session. The last 2 weeks, they just cram bills down.
Mm-hmm. So many you can't keep up with. You don't know the final portion of the bill and how it's changed until it's signed. What was a famous Nancy Pelosi? Let's just pass this omnibus so we can read it. I mean, how insane are we that we know every stat about a football game and a football team, yet we're passing omnibus bills worth trillions that nobody's read? It's beyond me.
Absolutely. And that's on the state level. We hadn't even talked about the federal level.
No. We could probably go on.
It's designed that way.
It's complex on purpose.
Right. It's designed. See, we have a government that was set up to not move very fast. There's a reason there's a saying, it takes an act of Congress to do something. Because it's supposed to be slow. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be, reasoned through.
Thought out.
Slow,
debated.
well thought out, that way you're not implementing things that are garbage. And we just reverse that, and we got to pass it to find out what's in it. Well, how about Ron Paul, Mr. No? Vote no until they give you the time to do it. And if you band together to do that, if you caucus together to do that, they'll have to.
Exactly. Man.
And they do the same thing with the budget.
And then they want to say you're ineffective for being that stopgap, for asking to do the right thing, just like Senator Moore. It just infuriates me that people can't understand this.
Well, that's one of the many ways that they schmooze people into doing what they tell you to do.
Right.
You have to realize when you're talking to the establishment, you're talking to the snake. Okay. just like Eve.
Mm.
The longer you sit there and entertain him, the more likely you are to succumb.
Mm.
Best just not to even talk to him. A lot of times,
That's good.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
I do the same thing with the mainstream propaganda. You know, people come up, oh, did you see this? Oh, did you see that? I'm like, no, I don't watch mainstream propaganda because they don't have to. They don't have to, you know, correct your thinking. They just got to get you off
Exactly.
thinking about things that doesn't matter.
It's psychological warfare, fifth generation warfare. It's yes, they cram your mind with all these things so that your brain splinters off in different directions. So, well,
And that way you don't actually focus on the things that matter. And that's what Convention of States really is. It is focusing on something that doesn't matter. That way, if they accomplish what they want, at best, you get term limits, okay? And at worst, you go the way of Venezuela because they had a constitution very much like ours. They had Article 5 in there. And Chavez kept bumping heads with Congress, who was holding him accountable like they should have, because they said, here's our constitution, you can't do that.
right.
And so he pushed for an Article 5. He got the Article 5 convention, and they went from the richest country in South America to starving in how many years?
Oh, very, very
What, 2
few.
years?
Yeah, 2 years.
Give or take? 18 months?
Wow.
I mean, people, there's no food on the shelves there. They're starving.
And we
And
don't
how
even
long
hear
will it
about
take-
it anymore.
You don't, because it's a history at this point. I mean, and that's what will happen here. Maybe not as fast, but it will inevitably happen, because what happens in every single communist nation, people start starving.
Exactly. The food, control the guns, and you control an entire population. So,
Yep.
well, I'm going to tell you, I really appreciate it, and I think this is a great focus point, and I want people out there to kind of do their homework, do their research, just take this in. You know, I think it's a very compelling argument that you've made about this, and I'm certainly going to be inquiring further. Maybe our legislators aren't in on the take. Maybe they don't understand these points of views, but well, we do need to get to them, and we need to make them understand that above all else, we should be under the Constitution always, and we should be looking at it from a constitutional standpoint. You've absolutely laid it out fantastically and made a compelling argument. I look forward to having more debate and conversations about this in the future.
Absolutely, I do as well. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me on the show.
Yeah, and tell everybody, like I said, how can they reach you? Yeah, I know you've got a YouTube channel, so let's plug you for a minute.
Yeah, I do some podcasting myself. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. It's called The Gentleman's Review. I put things out for the Southeast, just general things, mainly for members of the John Birch Society, prevalent things that's going on. I interviewed Charlize Byrd, several legislators, just to talk about how do you want to be approached by your constituents? And of course, they don't want people running at them, screaming and yelling. What's the most effective way? How do we do this? What are we dealing with in the Southeast? Like I said, to just cut through the propaganda on a more localized level and do that. You can go to jbs.org and check out some of the educational things there.
Oh, and you guys have a great scorecard too, by the way. A lot of us shared it quite a bit. A lot of people are using it, and their minds are being blown. It's new information they've not seen.
You would not believe the people I hand that to, and the look of betrayal on their face is. I need to just, when I hand it to people, I just need to take a picture of them or record their reactions.
I'm telling
to
you,
it.
same here.
Hashtag scorecard
Yes.
reactions or something like that, because they go from they're so conservative, they're such a good Christian, they're yada yada yada, and well, if they're so great and they're so conservative, why do they vote for this? Oh my goodness, they didn't vote for that. And you hand it to them and go, look right here, here it is. They voted for it.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh my goodness. Even Democrats, I handed out Warnock's voting record to people, and they're like, oh my, what? He voted for this? This cost my family my household $10,000.
Yes.
Oh my God, because it has cost per household on there.
Right. It's a real eye opener for sure.
And it's the cost of their voting and spending habits.
Mm-hmm.
It's like giving a drunk money. What are they going to do? They're going to go buy alcohol.
Exactly. Well, man, I appreciate it so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I hope that the people out there. I do apologize for comments. I don't know why they didn't go through, but I bet we would have had some great ones tonight. You can feel free to reach out to me if you want any more information on the John Birch Society. Arthur, please check out his channel. We'll put it down in the links everywhere that I can. And like I said, y'all study upon this. We're finding out revelation after revelation, and maybe we were sold a false bill of goods on this term limits. Maybe we should rethink what this could do, and above all, how on earth would we give the power to change a constitution or to rewrite the constitution we already have that we take our culture forward with. So,
one last thing, and I forgot to mention it.
Yes, sir.
The 26th.
Okay.
Mark Meckler's coming to Georgia.
Okay.
At the State House, promoting this stuff. So, if you can, come on down to the State House, the Gold Dome, and meet him, talk to him, ask him why he's doing what he's doing, and just confront the man. I mean,
the 26th.
Yeah, I think it's Wednesday.
Okay.
Maybe next Wednesday.
Got you. Okay, we can actually make up a flyer about that if we, and maybe put it out. Maybe we can get some people down at the Capitol and just talk to him about this and see what he says. So, awesome.
Indeed. Thanks for having me, Roy.
All right. Well, thank you, Arthur. Guys, we're going to wrap it up here for this Wednesday show. I got a lot of stuff planned, some really surprising guests coming up, and we're just going to schedule it as we can. Once again, you can go to givesendgo.com/smalltown underground. That's how you can donate to the channel. Appreciate everybody out there for their support. Welcome all the new people that are coming and following and being a part of this and supporting us. And again, this is the kind of stuff I love more than anything, is just learning and teaching and getting more knowledge. So we're going to get out of here. You guys have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you soon.
Legislature legalized unverifiable voting in 2000.
Like you said to Trump, but they're getting beauty.
They said, go out there and rob these houses and bring back the bounty, and then that'll pay your way.
Because Republicans who get endorsement from Georgia areas that they mean anything.
You can't sit on the sidelines any longer. You must get involved in the game. This is your sign.